Hello. Changing a name in Quebec can be a tricky task because it's not as easy as pretty much everywhere else in North America. Still, it's possible, though by default, you're obliged to bear the name that was given to you at your birth and which is stated in your birth certificate. But if you have serious reasons to change your name, you can apply to a Registrar of Civil Status, the famous Directeur d'État Civil, to change your name, and if you're refused there, you can proceed before a court asking to change your name by the authority of a judge. What are the reasons that are considered normally to be serious to change your name? This is not an exhaustive list. There might be something else, but generally, like usually, those are. First of all, if you're adding a name of one of your parents, for example, initially it was only your mother's last name or your father's last name, and now you want to combine them, for example, that's usually a valid reason. Also, if you use for several years another name, usually it's 5 years or more, and everywhere around, like your colleagues, your friends, your business partners, know you under this other name, be it the first name or last name. Usually, you have to prove with documents at hand that your contracts, your email or mail exchange, your scientific publications, your correspondence with your colleagues, with your friends, the letters you receive from your internet service provider, from your phone service provider. In the best case scenario, even when you communicate with the government, that in all those situations you normally use another name, not the name that is in your birth certificate. Maybe it would be slightly different, like Jake instead of Joan, for example, or like more than that, especially if your last name is like the last name by the birth certificate is really, really difficult to pronounce and write. But in any case, you'll have to prove it. You'll have to prove it with documents, with the copies of all those pieces of communication, submissions, whatever. And as long as the Directeur d'État Civil, the Registrar of Civil Status, is satisfied, then you will be allowed to change your name. Religious reasons, though they're not specifically stated in the Civil Code of Quebec, they are constitutional reasons, and for that reason, sorry for tautology, they're also allowed. But again, you'll have to prove that. Normally, to do that, you need a letter from your priest or imam or rabbi or whoever is the person in your temple or church or mosque or synagogue or whatever, and the religion should be recognized. So I'm not sure about the flying spaghetti monster, for example, though it's more or less official, but like more or less is not enough. Orthodox Church, or Greek Orthodox, uh, whatever is a Protestant church, or again synagogue, whatever, which are normally recognized as valid confessions, valid religious organizations, then that'll be okay. If your current name, as it is stated in your birth certificate, causes you pain and suffering, either because of specific family history, and that should be proven by a letter from your family doctor, from your psychiatrist, or treating psychologist, or neurologist, or psychotherapist, or whatever, again, recognized status, with the explanation why it is highly recommended that you should not bear that name anymore, that would work. Or if your name is widely associated with some known criminal or some atrocities or some very much unpopular figure, so that it could really cause you inconvenience or even pain and suffering if you continue to use such a name. And for that, again, you'll have to show that such a name causes these effects around you, either like countrywide or at least in your community. For that matter, there might be affidavits, there might be letters from your treating doctor, whatever is like an objective evidence, sort of. It might be also accepted, but again, that will be depending on the discretion of those who will review your application. And if they think that your evidence is not sufficient, then it might be denied, your application might be denied, and then you will have to go before a judge trying to overcome such a refusal from the administrative authority. Also, if your name, especially if it was given somewhere abroad, but it might be as well given inside Canada, if it sounds unpleasant or stupid or clearly, and it might be used to ridicule you, to mock you around. So again, there's some kind of psychological pain and suffering, and again, you can prove that. Or your name in translation in your community might be used for such mockery, then it might be a reason. Again, it might be a reason. For example, if your name is like a blockhead, for example, or something like that, or like stupid, or swine, or something like that, which might be in certain surrounding be seen as unpleasant, then it might be used. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but the idea, you have it. So the general rule is that you should go with the name that was given to you, but if you have serious reasons, which would be supported by the Civil Code of Quebec, by the Quebec Charter, by the Canadian Charter, with respect to your rights. So in a way, if your name somehow violates your rights as a person, personal rights, then you might go with it. Probably you know that initially this prohibition to change a name was significantly, like to a significant extent, caused by the idea of protecting women, so that this symbolic idea of becoming a property of a husband for a wife would be rejected, would be denied. Nowadays, maybe it's not so much of a valid concern, because nowadays, who would really think that the wife is a property of the husband? But still, it's still a rule. So the very fact that you got married, be you a wife or a husband, this is not a valid reason per se to change your name. But again, if you can prove that your religious rules absolutely require that you change your name, and that maybe in your country of origin or in your community somehow, if you do not change your name to have the same name in the whole family, your marriage would not be even recognized, or you would be ridiculed and mocked by the relatives on one side or another. Again, if you can prove that with documents at hand, then in such a situation you might fall with one of those exceptions. These rules are mostly maintained by the articles of the Civil Code of Quebec, but again, the religious part is mostly grounded in the constitutional rights. It's the Article 58 of the Civil Code of Quebec. as you can see. And this article um, requires that you first go, if it's not the question of the change name over minor, that's another story, that you first go to the registrar of the civil status. Usually you fill the application, you provide your evidence. If the registrar requires additional evidence, they ask, then they issue their decision, and you usually have 30 days if you are not happy with the decision to contest that in court. Again, if at a certain point you simply just stopped with your application or withdrew it somehow, you can do it later again. Or if one of the reasons that you used did not work, for example, religious reason did not work, then you could just collect your documents about 5 years or more of constant use, and then you could apply again. So the refusal is not terminal for your cause. You could still try again. If you're the one who wants to apply to change your name, you have to be at least 14 years old. But again, when it comes to a minor, there are additional rules. So it's preferable if you're 18 years old or more, and that you're domiciled in Quebec for at least 1 year, so that you're considered to be a Quebec resident. Because if you're not, then Quebec doesn't have jurisdiction about that. And also, if your original birth certificate was not given to you in Quebec, then before even asking to change your name, you'll have to register your birth certificate with the Directeur d'État Civil, so that it's recognized as the Quebec birth certificate. And then only after that you can proceed with further steps. And finally, well, there are many other, like maybe less significant rules and details, and if you really want to go with a change of name of yours, it's a good idea to consult a lawyer first. But out of the general rules, the last one is that your rights and particularly obligations stay the same even if you change your name. Meaning that if you had your signature on some kind of a contract, for example, and then you change your name, the contract is still valid. If you received some document in your previous name entitling you to some kind of rights, then the document is still valid. But most importantly, your obligations are still valid, because there are situations when people think that if they change their names, they can leave their debts, for example, behind. It doesn't work this way. So this is it. If you want to change your name in Quebec, can you do that? Yes, you can. But it's not without its difficulties, not without its challenges. So you'll have to prepare for at least several months, maybe more than a year, of some bureaucratic process, or sometimes even a judicial process. But if you have all your evidence at hand, if you have all the good reasons to proceed, then eventually you'll have your name changed. Thank you, and have a nice day.